Hi Year 12, this presentation will help you to learn how to develop a paragraph. As you already know, the paragraph structure follows the PEAL acronym. So you're going to start off with a point, explain it, give 2 examples for level 2, and then finish with a link. So what is the point? The point is the controlling idea of the paragraph. It's the main thing that you want to communicate. So if our essay topic is analyse how the beginning and ending of a text show an important change in a character or individual in a text you have studied, then our point would be an important change was shown in Thomas Anderson in the beginning of The Matrix. Now you can see from the tip here that I've used language from the essay topic by using the phrase important change and the word beginning, because that's what my first point is going to be about, the beginning. The next thing you need to do is explain your point further by giving more information. For example, Thomas Anderson changes throughout the film to become the one by the end, but before this happens, he begins as a reclusive computer hacker who sells illegal parts. So what I've done there is I've said that he changes, but I've also said what he's like at the beginning. So here's a reclusive computer hacker who sells illegal parts. Now another tip is to acknowledge both parts of the essay topic if appropriate. So you can see here that I've talked about the end, but then I've talked about the beginning as well, just so the reader knows that I will be discussing the end later on in my essay. After you've explained your point, the next thing to do is to give an example, one of 2. So what an example does is it acts as evidence to support the point you've made. Your example must include film techniques. So here's an example of an example. The audience is introduced to Thomas Anderson at the beginning of the film through a close-up shot of him asleep in front of his computer in his apartment. The light from his computer is reflected on his face. Close-up shots show the audience news articles on the computer screen about Morpheus, who is portrayed as a terrorist. And here's your tip. Using the word audience shows the marker that you understand that there is a relationship between the director and the audience, that these techniques are included for you. Now, it's not enough just to give an example. You also need to explain the example and why it's relevant to the point. This will show the marker why you chose this example as evidence for your point. For example, from these close-up shots, the audience learns that Thomas Anderson spends his spare time on his computer, working late into the night. We learn that he is interested in finding out who Morpheus is and that he has little idea of what the future holds for himself. The close-up shots of the articles show the type of character that Morpheus is and gives the audience a hint of the changes that are in store for Thomas. So you can see that I've used the word audience a couple of times, so it's important to emphasise the audience and that you know that the directors have used these shots for that purpose, to show us, the audience, something about the characters. I've included information here on the different types of transitions that you can use. Have a read through and see if there's any that you think you could use for your essays. They're quite good if you want to move seamlessly in between one part of the paragraph to another, and they're also useful for the final sentence of your paragraph. Also, for your conclusion, you can look at these ones here. So instead of writing in conclusion, there are a few other options there that you could use. So for level 2, you need to give more than one example in your essay. So you could start this off by using a transition. Furthermore, in a close-up shot, Thomas's computer portrays the message, "Follow the white rabbit." Thomas is unsure what this means until he is visited by Shoy and Dujour, who come to buy illegal computer parts and invite him to a nightclub. Initially, Thomas refuses until he sees Dujour's tattoo of a white rabbit on her shoulder. The audience is shown this through a camera zoom into a close-up shot. Once again, we're going to explain the example. The directors include these close-up shots to introduce the symbol of the white rabbit. The white rabbit is an allusion to Alice in Wonderland, where Alice follows it down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. Following the white rabbit represents the start of Thomas Anderson's journey into finding out what the Matrix really is. It also symbolises his loss of innocence and the beginning of his change into Neo. So you can see that not only have I used camera shots here, but I've also introduced the symbol, which is another film technique. Now, making this, discussing the allusion to Alice in Wonderland, that's the sort of thing markers are looking for in an excellence essay, allusions. So make sure you include that because that's quite important for the matrix. The last part of your body paragraph is the link, or the L in Peel. So the purpose of the link is to explain what we learn about the character, discuss the director's intention, explain what we learn about human behaviour or nature, and to refer back to the essay topic and point of the paragraph. Now, don't feel terrible if you don't include all of these things. It's quite a challenge to make it all work, but include as much as you can of these 4 points. You can. So you might be asking, what exactly is human behaviour or nature? So, as humans, we're different in many ways, but we're also likely to react, respond, or behave in similar ways when faced with a set of circumstances. For example, when a loved one dies, we're likely to go through the stages of grief, which are denial, anger, depression, and acceptance. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't go through those stages. So that's a way that we're all similar, and it can be called human behaviour or nature. Also, in circumstances that are challenging, we're likely to either step up to the challenge and conquer, or avoid the challenge and take on a victim mentality. So that's where we are different, but most people will fall into one of those 2 categories. So the characters in films often reflect human behaviour by behaving in ways that we can understand and relate to, because it's what most people would do in a similar situation. And that's why we find characters in films so relatable, because they would do what we would probably do. So by commenting on this in your essay, you're demonstrating insight and perception about human nature, and this is excellence level thinking. So, an example of a link which includes all 4 of the things that I previously mentioned. The beginning of the film shows that Thomas Anderson is a reclusive hacker who is inquisitive about who Morpheus is and what the Matrix is. We learn that he is willing to take action and find out where the white rabbit will lead him. The directors want the audience to realise that there's more to life than just working and sleeping, and we should be open to opportunities that challenge us and help us to become all we can. We learn that as humans, we can become stuck in our comfort zones and it can be hard to break out of them. Thomas Anderson is a good example of someone who had a comfortable life at the beginning of the film, but chose to take a chance and find out more about the world he lived in. This led to a big change in him and to him becoming the one. So this is the whole shebang, everything put together. So just pause this video and have a read through and you'll see how it all fits together. Thank you and good luck with your essays.